This is KHEA Radio. My name is Gardy, and I have a guest that's zooming in. We're going to get her introduced in a bit. I'm going to kick this on the FM, and we're going to have some fun talking about nutrition and health. Here we go. Good afternoon. It's KHEA Radio. Right now it's 2:02 right here in Galveston County. My name is Gardy. I have a guest that is zooming in. I'm going to have her introduce herself, and then we're going to have some fun today. How you doing?
Hi, my name is Dee Ru. I am a nutritionist coach, and I'm located here in the Houston area. Currently have a lot of different clients that are having different weight loss goals, whether it's for fighting or just general fat loss. And I'm just super excited to be here today and chat with you and, just see what your audience has questions about.
Yeah. So where are you originally from, and how did you end up here in Houston and in Texas?
Yeah, so I grew up in Chicago, grew up there till I was 18, and then I decided to get out of state and go to Pennsylvania for college. Then I was there for a couple years, and I actually moved to Houston once before for a brief period of time whenever I started my corporate job. And then I moved to Philadelphia with the company as well. And then 5 years ago, I moved back to Houston. So I've kind of hopped all around different geographic locations. But Houston seemed to grow on me because I've been here for about 5 years. So
Yes. How did you get into, I guess, nutrition and health? Have you always been into, I guess, like the exercise aspect as well?
yeah, so I think that this is something that maybe a lot of other people will be able to relate to. But as you're growing up, you're sometimes involved in sports. You tend to be super active, whether it's riding your bike or walking to school. And then even in college, playing college athletics. But then after college, there seems to be somewhat of a drop off of, okay, well, now what? And I think I was in that funk. I played college basketball. And whenever I graduated and I started my corporate job, I was so focused on my career and doing well that I didn't necessarily prioritize any of my health and fitness. So I got to a point where I wasn't super happy with where I was at from a health perspective. And so I started exploring, exercise. I feel like since exercise is more of an actionable item, people tend to go to exercise first before they go to nutrition. So I've probably tried every single studio class under the sun. Like I've tried bar, I've tried spin, I've tried CrossFit. Eventually I started landing on strength and conditioning. That's something that I really, enjoyed and I gravitated to. And so whenever I went down that path, I still realized just because I was doing exercise, I wasn't necessarily losing the weight that I wanted to lose. And I started getting super frustrated because there are so many different bad diets that are out there, and people innately are very tribal, right? So whenever you start something, you kind of commit to it and you're a big believer, but I still wasn't seeing results. And so I was getting super fed up with that. And I was like, screw it. Like I'm going to learn it myself, So I went ahead and got some certifications. I started realizing that there's a lot more to nutrition than a lot of what these like simple fast diets tell you to do. So I kind of went down that path, experimented on myself, and then I got to a place where I was super happy with my results. And I'm like, I have to share this. And I think that is what makes my approach just a little bit different. Is I definitely customize, the nutrition for the person. I really believe that nutrition should fit your lifestyle. You shouldn't have to change your lifestyle for your nutrition. And that's kind of my belief about the whole thing.
And I looked at your website, and I'm going to ask you real quick, what is your website? If someone wants to go check that out, where do they go?
They would just simply go to Ru Nutrition and Wellness .com. And on there, you're going to just find all of my different information and kind of what services I offer and any kind of other information that you might want to know about me.
So the one thing that I noticed is it was a questionnaire, and it was asking, what kind of foods do you like? What kind of things do you not like? So building something like kind of like you just said, like building it specifically, because if you build something for somebody and they don't like it, then it's not gonna work for them.
Absolutely. So you really need to tailor to what you like and what you don't like. So the beginning part of my process is filling out a survey. It's an extensive survey. It'll probably take you about 45 minutes. And some people think that that may be a little aggressive, but if I don't know more about you and what works for you, I'm not going to be able to give you a plan that's sustainable. I think a lot of people would agree when you try a diet, it just doesn't become sustainable. You'll try it for like 2, 3 weeks. It'll be like a flavor of the month. You'll lose maybe some rapid weight, like some water weight essentially. And then you'll be like, oh, I did this. And so let me fall off the wagon. And then all of a sudden you're back to where you started. And so for my process, we talk about your lifestyle. Like, when do you wake up? When do you go to sleep? Do you work day shift? Do you work night shift? What is your sleep like? What is the stress of your job like? Those are all factors that play a part of what your nutrition or what your wellness goals are. Another piece of what I do is I send a comprehensive list of foods. We go through like so much different options, and you tell me what you like and you don't like. I think the worst thing is have something on your plate that you don't like to eat, and then you're going to have to force yourself to eat it. That's not fun either. I do have clients that tend to have a sweet tooth at the end of the night. I think that you can fit some of that stuff in. It's just all in moderation. So like nutrition in general is based off of some fundamental pillars, and those pillars are calories input and output, aerobic versus anaerobic, and those are some of the things that you need to consider whenever you're building your nutrition plan. Stuff like timing, portion size, hormonal response, that all plays a factor into achieving the goal that you want to achieve for yourself.
You talked about those pillars with the nutrition. I guess what's just some general advice for someone, like what time should people, without getting into custom case by case, but like what time should you be eating? What is a general good meal plan as far as like proteins, fats, and carbs? Just some general advice that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. So we'll talk about timing a little bit. We'll start with that one. A lot of people, whenever they go on a calorie restrictive diet, they'll be like super, super good all day. And then at night they binge. And you wonder why you binge. And that's actually a hormonal response. So even though we have a conscious mind, our bodies are only reactive to environmental responses. So if you're starving your body all day, it's going to submit a hormonal response, which will make you want to binge and overeat. So whenever it comes to timing, you need to eat before you're hungry, essentially. You need to keep that hormonal response at a level that is manageable. Times really vary from person to person. It depends on your work. It depends on when you go to bed. But some general advice I'd say is, about an hour after you wake up. But that also depends if you work out. If you're going to do fasted cardio, that's different. And then about an hour before you go to sleep. But all manageable portion sizes. And then throughout the day, that's just so variable. I couldn't even give you some rough estimates because it all depends on, your lifestyle. And then what was the second part you had mentioned?
Just as far as like proteins, fats, and carbs, or what's just a good general diet to kind of follow as far as like what should people be eating and maybe trying to stay away from?
Yeah. So the macronutrients that you're talking about, carbs, fats, proteins, we all run off of that energy, and it's a mix depending on what you're doing. So if you're doing more aerobic exercise, which is like endurance or steady strength training, that is your primary energy source. Energy source is fats. And then if you're doing more anaerobic activity, which is like explosive training, stuff that fighters might do, you really want to prioritize carbs as an energy source. So it really depends on what you're doing with where you want to prioritize certain foods, but there is a macronutrient profile that is right for you based off of the variables that you are. And the best analogy I'm going to give you, because a lot of people hear macros and they hear all this other stuff and jargon and they're like, oh my gosh, you lost me. But the best example I'm going to give you is probably, fuel for a premium car. So let's just say you have a premium car. Let's say, I don't know, Porsche. You have a Porsche, you go up to the gas station. What are you going to fill it with? you're probably going to fill it with premium fuel, right?
Right.
Because you want it to run the best it can. Now, granted, if you put regular fuel in the Porsche, probably will still run, just not as well, and probably will have issues. So essentially, that's what nutrition is. You have to find that premium, fuel for your body. You have to make sure that the energy input, whatever you're putting into your body, is going to match the output that you want it to have. So nutrition has a huge impact on, how you sleep, how you absorb stress, how you react to anxiety. And when you figure out that formula of what's right for you, you're going to notice a huge difference in how you perform, your energy level. If you start getting sleepy around 2 o'clock, it all is just fueling your body for the output that you want it to perform at.
When I look at macros and I see numbers, and I've had some done for me, a couple years ago, but it's confusing because I don't understand. It's like, okay, if I have to cook for myself, I have to look at the labels. It's a lot. Is there a way to simplify it, or maybe I just didn't understand it the right way?
Yeah, I mean, anything you could kind of simplify. It just depends on, what your goal is. So if you want to be a bodybuilder, you're going to have to get comfortable with those numbers, because those macros do matter to, probably plus or minus 5 grams. But if you're looking just for general health, prioritize probably your veggies a little bit more. Your protein size should be probably no bigger than a fist size. So that's about 3 to 4 ounces, depending on if you're a female or male. And then fats should be minimal. So prioritizing healthy fats like avocados or olive oil, stuff like that, and try not to overuse it. A lot of people will use a lot of oil in their cooking. I always try to advise using other substitutes like chicken broth or something that is lower in fats. So those are just some general tips that you can use if you're just looking for overall health. If you're looking for a specific body type, that's when you have to get into the details. So macros in general kind of help us from like a mathematical or science perspective to achieve a certain result. But if you're looking just for general health and wellness, like let's just say you're just looking for, a couple pounds and just a more sustainable lifestyle, not having to count calories, because I do have clients that say, hey, listen, I'm not going to measure my food. And that's okay. We don't have to measure your food, but we're going to make some conscious decisions on what we're putting into our body. And so you don't necessarily have to measure everything if that's not your goal. It's just a matter of looking at food a little bit differently, looking at food as fuel rather than something that you can just consume or over consume. Just like you're filling up that Porsche, if you fill it too much, it's going to overfill. And that same philosophy is applied to nutrition, is if you overeat, your body's going to end up storing that as fat rather than using it as fuel.
You mentioned that you played college basketball. Where'd you go to school and what'd you study?
So I actually went to 2 schools. So I started at Penn State, a branch campus, played basketball there, and then I transferred out to a smaller school called Waynesburg University. It's just south of Pittsburgh. And I just finished my undergrad there. Actually, my undergrad was in environmental science. So I've always been into the sciences. And then I got my master's in Philadelphia, work at St. Joseph's University, and I focused in data analytics. So you take someone that loves science, has a big data analytics background, and then you give them a nutrition certification. And I think that's like the best merriment that you can get.
Yeah, from a natural athlete, I mean, to go and play college basketball, you have that with the data, with the science, and it just makes sense, right?
Oh yeah, and so that's another thing I really want to mention is it's so important to experiment on yourself. Everything that I recommend to all my clients, I have done myself. Like I've tried those bad diets. I have done a caloric deficit. Even from some of my fighter clients that I have, I've put myself through a weight cut voluntarily with no fight lined up. So I know exactly what are the ups and the downs and what to do to get past it. So I never recommend anything that I haven't done myself. So granted, I haven't necessarily gotten into the ring or stepped into the ring from like a amateur or pro perspective, but I do train in boxing. I started training with Sammy for Muay Thai, which I'm learning how to use my legs. But when it comes to nutrition and the weight cuts, I have been there. I have experimented with it. So I think it's really important because I do have that perspective. Like another thing that I think is always important is to warn people what's coming, because generally people have similar hormonal responses. So always in the first week, I have about first 2 weeks, I have about 50% of clients that complain of like withdrawal symptoms, because depending on what their diet was before, they might have had a lot of processed sugar and your body becomes addicted to that. So some of them will experience headaches in that first week, just because they're withdrawing for something that their body got really accustomed and addicted to. But again, other bodies are different. So I always try to warn everybody like, hey, this might happen. You might expect this. And I find that when you warn someone that this might happen, it makes them feel really secure and ready for the next step. Like, okay, I can do this because this is something that does happen.
You know, talking about, I guess, fighters going through that weight cut, what are some things that somebody may get addicted to? Is that, I'm guessing, like sugar and caffeine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sugar, caffeine, all definitely items that people tend to, have addictions to. But also people have different dietary preferences. One dietary preference that was really unique for me to deal with was I had someone that was more of a carnivore diet. And so as a nutritionist, that's sometimes difficult because she was trying to cut for a fight and she only wanted to prioritize carnivore, which is primarily protein. So as a nutritionist, you kind of have to map a new way of how to get them to their goal with their dietary needs. And it becomes kind of a challenge in itself, but it's all possible. It's just a matter of mapping out a strategy and having a plan. As long as you have a plan, you'll achieve your goal. I've had fighters come to me 2 weeks before and say, hey, I have like 10 or 15 pounds that I need to lose. And we get it done. It's just a matter of having the plan. Now, if you come to me the day before, I can't necessarily guarantee you a massive weight cut, but I definitely have a few tricks up my sleeves.
So if somebody does need to utilize a weight cut for a fight or a competition, what does that diet generally look like? And I assume it's custom for everybody, but what is it? I've never experienced a weight cut. I have talked to people cutting weight, and sometimes at the end, it's not a fun place to be, but what does that look like?
So typically my process is a little different. I like to start 10 days out. A lot of people tend to do more of a 5-day water load, which is absolutely possible, but from a easy perspective, if you want to have a lot more ease with it, I find if you start a lot further out, that'll be better. So typically about 10 days out, we start doing a water loading process, which is we don't necessarily change your diet whatsoever. All we do is just add more water. And so you start water overloading your system, your system. And then from there, about 3 days out, we start taking out your sodium. So we make sure we don't add extra salt to your food. We prioritize proteins with lower sodium, stuff like salmon or chicken. And then we also take out potassium. So we try not to give you like foods in high potassium. And so what that does, it creates a hormonal response within your body, and your body will react by dropping that weight, essentially that water weight. So it's almost like the analogy I come up with is like putting fruit in a dehydrator. And that's exactly what you're doing to your body. You're dehydrating your body. So you're making yourself lighter just through water. So within those last 3 days, I have an organic mix that I use of dandelion root and uva ursi that helps you continue to drop weight through using the bathroom a lot. So it's a diuretic. And then about a day out, about 24 hours out before you weigh in, that's when we remove food. So you're actually eating all the way up until the day before, which a lot of fighters, they think they need to cut calories like that week of. Which is a common misconception because that's not how the body works. So 24 hours, we start cutting food out. And then that night before, depending on how much weight you still have to drop, we go through different protocols depending on the fighter. So one protocol is more cardio based, and that is probably for leaner fighters in a lower weight class because they tend to like cardio a lot more. And then another protocol is a bath protocol, something that more advanced fighters are probably familiar with. And basically it's cycling through, you know, sitting in a hot bath into a towel wrap. I have an ointment that I put on them to help, you know, make them sweat a lot more. And that's probably for your mid-range weight fighters. And then more on the heavyweight side, more of the heavier fighters, they prefer the sauna. And so I have a protocol for that too. So just depending on your preference, I can modify your weight cut, which I think is pretty nice for a fighter, instead of like trying to kill themselves with a bunch of cardio the day before when they're asked to, from a fighting perspective, you know, perform the next day. I think one of the best comments I've ever gotten so far, and I'm going to have to say, you know, Sammy was the night after his fight. I think he was out to eat with his team and his family, and he had FaceTimed me, and he was telling me about how, you know, through that weight cut, through that nutrition plan, he was able to, you know, absorb damage a lot differently. And that's through not only the dehydration, but it's also through the rehydration. The rehydration as a fighter is so important. And the best example I'm going to give is, you know, one of my close friends, Charles, you know, he was telling me this, and I think it's a great example, is, you know, you have two glass jars. You have one with, both of them have an egg in it. One just has water and the other one doesn't. If you shake both jars, which egg do you think is going to survive better? The one with the water in it. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, with that being said, the same with rehydration in a fighter. You know, when you're taking damage and when you're getting blows left and right, like, you're going to be able to take that damage a lot better because you are rehydrated for it, rather than a fighter that's not dehydrated. So, you know, I do a lot of rehydration shakes. And that's a recipe that I don't necessarily share because that's something that I've come up with. But if you are interested with that, definitely can help you doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, Sammy actually told me that you had helped with this rehydration, and he was bragging on you a couple times whenever we were on air and off air, and how this was the easiest weight cut of his life, that his wife did it with him, and she's not even fighting, but it's good to have that support. And he was talking about, you know, the weight that she had dropped and all of that.
Yeah. I love actually doing couples because I think having a support system, just from a mental health perspective, is so helpful. Being able to have somebody that is advocating for you, that is encouraging you, that is helping you, hold you accountable, and is in your everyday life is so motivating. You know, I am always available as the nutrition coach, but I'm not going to be there every single second of your day. And so having someone that you're doing it with, or even pairing up with a friend, can be super helpful. Like, I have a couple of couples, and I actually have a family in Miami that are all on my plan, which is kind of cool because they don't live together anymore. It's a you know, a brother and a sister and the two parents, but they're going on a family trip this weekend, and they're like each individually asking me, well, what should I plan? Like, what meals? I'm like, you guys are going to hold each other accountable when you go out to eat. Like, you guys got this. So it's really cool whenever you have people that are doing their goal or the plan together, because it's really just encouraging overall. So yeah, I think it was just such a pleasure working with Sammy and Jennifer. They're just such wonderful.
Are you there? I lost your audio. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
You are not moving, but I can hear you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. We're back. We were just talking a little bit about Sammy and the family, and how much it was a pleasure to work with them. One thing I wanted to ask, one more thing about Sammy. You did his nutrition through the entire fight camp. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Mm-hmm.
And what did his diet look like? Because I want to look. I see him at the weigh-ins, and I'm like, okay, that's what I need. I need to look like Sammy, right?
They built that themselves. I just control the timing and the portions. Like, I will say, timing of your meals is so important. If you can get the timing of when you should eat for your body and for your lifestyle, it makes food choices a lot easier. So, I mean, a lot of stuff that they tend to like to eat is, poultry. They have some red meat in there, so it's not like completely red meatless. But they also have, fish as well. They include a lot of veggies. That's something that they really like. But actually, one thing that I think they love is their breakfast shake that they do, which is just, actually, I have a lot of clients that love it. It's really, all it is Greek yogurt, almond milk, a half serving of protein powder, whatever your preference is, and some fruit, and a little bit of dark chocolate. And they seem to love that. And I think Jennifer really loves her yogurt bowl, which is like pecans, yogurt, and blueberries. So something as simple as that can be really, really tasty. I always think it's interesting, the flavors that people tend to gravitate towards. But I'd say if I had to call them out, that would be some of their favorites.
Okay, I was talking to someone the other day, and they mentioned that they did a weight cut for their first fight all by themselves. They did it by themselves, and then the second fight that they were having, they had some support, from a friend or whatever. Would you recommend a fighter trying to put together their own weight cut, especially if they haven't done one before?
It depends how much weight you want to lose, to be honest. Like, I get a lot of clients that come to me from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and typically their tournaments are a little bit different because they have to weigh in and then fight like an hour later. And so essentially they have to do fat loss. They can't necessarily do a water cut. So something like that, like as long as you are able to kind of figure out what your calories are and when you should be eating based off of your performance, like, yeah, you can do a cut like that. That would be ideal. If you need any guidance, obviously go get that, but that's something that you could probably do on your own. But like a fighter that needs to dehydrate themselves, if you've never done it before, you can get seriously hurt and seriously injured. I don't recommend doing a weight cut by yourself if you've never done it before and if you don't have proper advice. Now, if you have someone that has gone through it and that can give you the proper support that you need, absolutely. But that final day when you're dehydrating yourself and you have a lot of weight to lose and you're either in the sauna or a bath, you can get yourself into some trouble. Like, there have been fighters that have tried to do a bath cut, and then they get out of the bath too quickly, they pass out, and they end up in the water and drowning. Like, I mean, it's kind of sad that, the information is not out there for them to utilize to be able to do that safely. For all my weight cuts, if I do a sauna or a bath, I am there with them through the whole process until they go to bed, because it can be really, really dangerous. So I don't recommend doing weight cuts by yourself. I know there are a lot of fighters that do. Fighters tend to be very independent people, and so they want to, do that themselves. But there's nothing wrong with asking for a little help with someone that's gone through it before, and then also that does it a lot for a living. So,
and you work with people that aren't just fighters as well. You work with others, right?
Yeah. So I, obviously work with fighters. I, have this secret love for weight cuts, which I don't know why, but I do. It's something that is very fun for me. But I do deal with weight loss clients. I also have some clients that want to build muscle. So I do also have some bodybuilders as well. So whatever your nutrition goals are, I got them. I also do prenatal nutrition. So there are some women that just need a little assistance with, building their nutrition plan while they're pregnant. So I do that as well. So anything with nutrition is something that I do.
What's your overall goal for Ru Nutrition and Wellness?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. That's such a great question, because I firmly believe in infinite goals rather than finite goals. Because finite goals are something that you can achieve, but then you're stuck with the then what. So, my goal for Ru Nutrition and Wellness is to help improve the education of nutrition across the entire world. I don't think that the education for nutrition is where it needs to be, especially as you're developing and you're growing up. We're kind of subject to a lot of marketing, a lot of very influenced opinions about what nutrition should be or what a body type should look like. And so for my overall goal, my vision is to just educate the world in the information that they should know. Like, we know more about, outer space and the ocean than we do about our own bodies and how to fuel our own bodies. And I think that needs to change. And so my goal is to change that. And that would be my impact for the industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a pretty big goal, but like you said, we learn a lot of this stuff in school. Do you think that there should be more of a focus on nutrition and some of the stuff that you're able to help people with now when they get out of school? This is like when they need it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I tell all my clients whenever I first do the initial consultation with them is, I want to give you all the tools that you need to take this with you for the rest of your life. Because I do believe that, the kind of pay it forward. So like, if I help one client and I give all the information that they need and the tools they need for success, they're going to be able to tell, 2 more people, and then they're going to have the tools that they need. And so for me, I look at it as the butterfly effect, or the domino effect, essentially, is let me educate as many people as I can talk to and give the information out there so people can start making educated and real decisions for their own bodies. And so I tell all of my clients, my goal is for you not to use me forever, but for you to get the information that you need to set yourself up for success for the rest of your life. So let's just say, life happens 5-10 years down the road. You get into a situation where, life gets stressful, you start gaining weight. You're going to be able to look back and be like, you know what? I worked with Dee 5 years ago. She gave me all the tools that I need. I have it, and I can do this by myself. I'm going to find an accountability partner. I'm going to make sure that I time my food correctly, and I'm going to do it. And then, send me maybe a little note like, hey, your plan worked again, and I'll be happy. That's all that really matters for me.
Let's say it is like 20 years from then. I guess like the nutrition needs will change, right? Depending on what they have going on at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Lifestyles change, goals change. At one point in time, like, I wanted to be like freaking Twiggy, but that's not a goal that I want for my body type anymore. So it just depends where your goals are. Like, I know some people that focused on cutting, and now they want to be bodybuilders, so they want to bulk up. And so it just depends on where you're at with your life and your goals. I do have a misconception that comes up a lot, and I think it's a perfect idea to bring it up, is a lot of my older clients, the initial consultation, they'll tell me, well, I got older, so my metabolism wasn't like it used to be. And that's actually false. When it comes to age, the difference in calorie consumption maybe will be around 75 calories, if that. And it depends on how much lean muscle mass they have, and et cetera. But just because you're older doesn't mean your metabolism starts working. It's just because you've made decisions in your lifestyle that has impacted that metabolism. So it's definitely just not something because you're older that you can't do it. You're never too old to start. So
what kind of decisions would impact your metabolism?
So, how I mentioned earlier about, college athletics, typically when people leave, they don't work out anymore, so they end up losing muscle mass. So females in particular get really sensitive about building muscle. And there is no reason for that opinion whatsoever, because the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn by just resting. Muscle impacts your metabolism, and just different factors depending on the person itself.
Can you remind everybody, I guess, what your website is and everything that you offer service-wise, and why someone should get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is ru-nutritionandwellness.com. You can also find me on Instagram, and that Instagram is ru_nutrition and wellness. And then different services I offer are weight loss services, weight gain, weight cut, performance nutrition, bodybuilding, prenatal nutrition, basically any kind of nutrition that you want. I do coach as well. I do some personal training from the strength and conditioning side, and I do a boxing fitness class because it's something that I enjoy to do. But my main focus is really the nutrition side of things and getting that education out there. And I really think that if you have a certain fitness or wellness or nutrition goal in mind, you should absolutely contact me. I do an initial free consultation. It's 30 minutes. We basically go through your background. I go through my process. I give some recommendations based off of the information that you give me. And then you can basically use that time, those 30 minutes, however you want to. If you just want to ask me a bunch of questions, we'll sit there and ask a bunch of questions. I'm not here to necessarily sell you a service. I do offer services, but it's up to you as a consumer whether or not you want to partake and you want to be a part of the nutrition journey, or if you just have questions that I can answer.
Yes. So if there was something else that you would want to add in this year or next year and in the future to things that you offer and do, what would that be?
I actually am trying to start building courses, nutrition courses. So stuff that you can, subscribe to online, things that you can download. I'm looking at building some resources and guides that, you guys can, access, looking to kind of build, more of a social media presence so I can start getting the education out there. For me, it's really about the education. So the more resources that I can give, not only to provide training as like, oh, this is a nice to have checkbox, I have it on my bookshelf, but really like competent information that you can actually gravitate towards and understand. Like, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about, the glute transporters that, transfer all this other stuff. Science. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about real examples, things that you can have in your real life, so you can just increase your competency as an individual when it comes to nutrition. I think everyone has a right to that knowledge. It is your body. And I want to make sure that you have that knowledge. That's what's important to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, I just want to thank you so much for having me on, and looking forward to hearing more from your audience. And if you guys need anything whatsoever, I'm more than happy to come back and talk about particular topics.
This is KHEA Radio 99.5 FM.